Looking a bit like an Ibu today. I am defrotted. We'll talk about those words in Cajun French, and we'll talk about Interview with Vampire today. Hey everybody, it's Em. So, if you know me, you know I grew up speaking both Cajun French and English. And so your Cajun French lesson for the day, an ibu is, it's a noun version of like the verb to like mess up your hair, to be disheveled. And défroquer, I think, well, it basically just means wrecked, ruined, get wrecked. Défroquer, to just look messed up. Anyway, so there's your Cajun French lesson for the day. If you want more Cajun words, I can do that going forward. But it seems, appropriate because I figured we could talk about Interview with the Vampire, the new AMC series based on Anne Rice's book and or the Vampire Chronicles. I'm not real clear. The title is taken only from the first book, so I don't know if that's all we're getting adapted or not. First, though, I'll position myself in relationship to the material so that you can see where I'm coming from, put all my biases out on the table there, so that people coming to this series without knowledge of the books or, a love for the first movie, obviously may feel differently. Again, this is all opinion, so, your opinion may vary, and if you have thoughts, comments about it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. So, let's get started. You can see, like, a cat bed back there. Oh, well. You can see all my junk, actually, over here. I just couldn't be bothered to do the setup in front of my shelves today. But anyway, I started reading Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles in middle school. Probably a little too young to be reading that stuff, but there you go. I don't remember why I picked them up, except that Anne was, well known in southern Louisiana for these books, and felt a little bit naughty to read them. And so, I even named my little black kitten Armand. One of my nicknames was Lestat because I was blonde and a little bit of a brat. Still sometimes am. So I have like a love of the books. I read through Blood Canticle. I would read each book. Well, the first few books I obviously were already out, but from about the time Mimnock came out, I was reading them as they were published. And I read through Blood Canticle, and then a few years ago, the late and delightful Ms. Rice released Prince Lestat, which admittedly I only got about halfway through. I couldn't tolerate it, and so I never read the Atlantis book either. But through Blood Canticle, I was devoted. I also loved Ramses the Damned. I read Violin, Servant of the Bones. I read the first, The Witching Hour, and Lasher, but I never read anything further in the Mayfair Witches. I think there are more books now, but I never did go any further than that. And I never read the Anne Rampling books. So, most of, and I think this is true for a lot of Anne Rice readers, most of the core of my, reading was of the Vampire Chronicles, including the ancillary stuff. I love Pandora, Vittorio, those as well. So, there you go. A devotee. In 1994, the Neil Jordan film came out. I, like so many people, had my doubts that Tom Cruise could pull it off. I was delighted with the movie. I was like 18 or 19 when it came out. So, hey, Brad Pitt was pretty. Tom Cruise was just so much fun as Lestat. Of course, there were some hokey, effects. For 94, it was pretty good, though. That year for me is defined by Interview and Stargate. Those two movies coming out. That's kind of what sticks in my head for 1994. But yeah, so hang on, I'll let the cat in. So Crowley's in here now. You know that's going to be trouble, probably. But anyway, onward to AMC's most recent series, which I understand was created with Anne's blessing. I know she shopped the material for a long time. She had some very definite ideas about what she did and didn't want. Obviously, there have been some major changes to the source material, which they're doing a good job of trying to explain a bit in the series. But here, the overall setup. Louis Pointulac is now in Dubai in modern day. Daniel Malloy is old. So no more Christian Slater for us. But he had interviewed Louis in the 1970s in San Francisco, just as the actual book suggests. And now he is re-interviewing Louis, and Louis is making some changes to his story. Now, this Louis, mind you, is a man of color. He, instead of being obviously a plantation owner, he was the owner of a string of brothels in Louisiana, New Orleans, in the early 1910s. And that is how he met Lestat in this version. So, that's a change. And I understand why they did it. I understand not wanting to, glorify a plantation owner or make him sympathetic in any way. I understand the desire for diversity and for showing a New Orleans that's more genuinely, a mixture. So, I actually really like that about this adaptation. I wasn't sold on Sam Reed after the first episode, but he's growing on me. He plays Lestat. I think they're doing a nice job of showing that Lestat can fake it till he gets what he wants, and then slowly his true colors kind of begin to emerge. His manipulative tactics, his narcissism, a lot of that. So there's a lot of subtlety in this that the film version did not really allow for, because you can do more in a longer series, hour-long installments. So I mean, overall, I'm enjoying it. We've met Claudia, who is the little girl that Louis feeds on, and then Lestat transforms into a vampire to keep Louis from leaving him. In the book, obviously, Claudia is 5 years old, and even in the 1994 film, you can't really, first of all, for production reasons, working with a child is super difficult. The younger they are, the harder it is to get permissions for things, and certainly to put them on a pseudo horror set would not be okay. Also, some of the erotic nature of the vampiric elements would not go over well with viewers if they were watching it with a very young child, I don't think. In the 94 movie, I think Kirsten Dunst was about 12 years old, but she could have passed easily for 9 or 10, Claudia being, aged up. In this one, the girl playing Claudia mentions, I think, that she's a perpetual 14-year-old, so they have kind of aged her up quite a bit there. Instead of making this Claudia spooky, and I think a 5-year-old who speaks like an adult and is just that precocious has an inherent creep factor that obviously an older kid, you're not going to get creepiness from that. You're just going to get, what a sass. And so that's what they did. I think they leaned into Claudia being kind of chaotic and sassy, and took away, she's not at all creepy in the way that even Kirsten Dunst managed to pull off the creep factor, the kind of just so that's interesting and different. But I don't know. I mean, I like this Claudia, but I don't know. I'm not buying the family dynamic just yet, because I don't know. It doesn't quite land with me yet. I mean, I felt that way like from the first episode. I was like, I don't know, but then I watched the second. I was like, okay, this feels a little bit more like, I don't want to say correct, but true to the tone. And I think we're going that way. What I would really enjoy seeing, I think. So in The Vampire Lestat, the novel, Lestat wastes no time in just calling Louis an absolute liar. And so I really want at some point for us to get that side. And I don't know if that would happen in another season, or whatever, where like Lestat's like, okay, Louis flat out lying and here's my side. But they've done a nice job of dropping, I think, a few of the things about Lestat that you don't know when you read interview, that you find out later. His inability to read, like he can read, he can kind of look at books and understand them, but like he doesn't read per se. Like he was an uneducated child. And so things like that, where I feel like when Lestat is supposedly reading a newspaper, it doesn't seem like he's actually reading it. And you kind of go, I don't think it's bad acting or bad directing. I think this is Lestat, where he's like, I'm just skimming this because I'm absorbing the content in a different way. And I could be misremembering because it's been so long since I've read any of this stuff. I used to reread Interview every 2-3 years, and I'll link my last video about it from the last time I read it. And I used to reread Pandora and Merrick pretty regularly, but none of the others, actually. I haven't reread Vampire Lestat, Queen of the Damned, and that's a movie we are not going to talk about because that was like wrong in so many ways. But yeah, so I don't know if they're planting that or not. The time shift is interesting. We're dealing with men going off to war, shipping off to the First World War at one point. I think I like, Lestat's jealous nature is true to his character. Louis is not as depressed as in the book, but that's probably a good thing because the last time I read the book, it hit me harder, like what a drag he is. And I could kind of feel like why Lestat was so frustrated sometimes. I think there's a time in your life when maybe you sympathize with that, when you're going through those philosophical deep dive questions about your existence and God and evil, and then there's a point where you get past it maybe and you're like, oh my God, and you don't have the patience for people who are going through that particular quest in life. But so maybe Louis used to be my favorite, and now I'm kind of like, I mean, I still love him, but I guess there's a reason I was always a Lestat deep down, so... And Lestat loves Louis. So here's the other thing. In the first episode, Lestat actually says to Louis that he loves him, and I really had a problem with that because I don't think Lestat... But then, looking back, I'm like, well, was that a manipulation tactic? Was he saying what he knew he needed to say to get Louis to do what he wanted him to do? It's very, very subtly played throughout, and I think that's actually really a good thing because I think the relationship's very complicated and it's toxic, no question, but I appreciate that they didn't just try to pick a couple of characteristics and play those straight through. They've given it a lot more nuance, and it keeps me interested to see where it's going and how they're going to keep doing it. So, I mean, yeah, overall, I'm enjoying it, and I'll keep watching, and we'll see where it goes. Daniel's kind of obnoxious, more obnoxious even than when he was younger, apparently. When he interrupts somebody during their prayers, like there's a character who is Muslim, and he's got his prayer rug out and he's doing his prayers, and Dan just starts talking at him, and I'm just like, I was just like so offended on behalf of this poor guy who's just trying to do his, I was just like, dude, come on. I know you know better, but he's just like, he's that obnoxious, this Daniel. And Louis kind of has a very interesting superiority complex going on that he didn't really have, like, in modern day. Like, past Louis isn't there yet, but I think there's that, you can see it forming where he thinks he's kind of better than Lestat because he doesn't, kill indiscriminately, and he's got standards or something, I don't know, and he still kind of comes off high-handed in a way, and it's interesting, and I think making him a person of color, and actually adds like several more layers to that, where he's not coming from that place. I don't want to like remark on it too much. I can see that like his desire to be on the level of and even better than, or the feeling that you need to be better than even to be seen to be as good as, right? And like almost like that's his way of proving he belongs. But anyway, yeah, so if you've watched it and you love it, let me know. If you've watched it and you hate it, let me know. If you've read the books, haven't read the books, loved the movie, hated the movie, think this is better than, worse than, I want to hear about it. I want to hear your thoughts. But yeah, I mean, I have really complicated feelings about it. I've written a couple of blog posts on my site if you want to go read those, but I think I've pretty much touched on everything here. Yeah, it's complicated, but I like that it's complicated and nuanced, and that there's no like, he's right and he's wrong, and this is, the right answer, the wrong answer, because life is so much more than yes, no, black, white, and so the fact that they're playing in the gray is, it's fun, and it keeps it interesting. Okay, so that's it. That's all I have to say today, and I will see you when I'm coming up out of the depths of getting my writing done. Because I've just had to write a really, like, a fight and a death scene, and now we're dealing with the aftermath, and it's slow going, but, slow and steady and all that kind of thing. Other than that, yeah. Take care.